So, I guess this is the last panel for the day, right? And so happy to have been here for these amazing 2 days of celebrating our dear sister, Geri Allen. Thank you again to everybody that made this possible. This has been really amazing. I wish we could do this with so many artists, dig so deeply into their work. This last panel is going to focus on 2 amazing collaborations that Geri did with Epatha Merkerson. The first one was celebrating, well, actually, I think it was called Geri Allen and Friends, celebrating the great jazz women of the Apollo. And one of the best things that if you've heard the panels earlier, you've probably heard this before, but one of the best things about Geri is how she brought people together. And I remember when I first met Epatha, Geri said, come to New York when I do this. I think I was an add-on late. I think I was, because she asked me pretty last minute to do this, I think.
Quite a few. You weren't the only one.
Okay.
Well, there's a reason for that. Yeah.
No, I know. I mean, I'm just saying, I was happy that I could clear out a couple of days in my schedule to come. And when she mentioned Epatha, I was so excited because, of course, I too had watched Law and Order.
But theater experience. Law and Order.
No, I know, but I'm sorry. But anyway, I think, Geri did an album called The Gathering, and I think that was so apropos for her because, for me, she was a gatherer, gatherer of many things, and information, music, people. So this Apollo performance show was a great big gathering of a lot of people, and I know Farah spoke a bit about it yesterday. But first, I think the best thing would be, because you've heard from most of us before, except for Epatha and Tia. So Epatha, maybe you could just speak a little bit about when you first met Geri.
Oh, I met Geri in the late 80s. Dwight, and I'm from Detroit, but I'm maybe about 5 or 6 years older. So I was already in New York when Geri came, and Dwight kept telling me about this young sister from Detroit that he wanted me to meet, who he felt we had similar sensibilities. And when I met her, I thought, what the fuck? I've never been accused of being quiet. And she was so quiet. And I'm like, and then I saw her play. And then I understood what he meant. That sort of ferocity in our work. And from that point on, I was a huge fan of Geri's. And again, I think it was at the insistence of Dwight that I get this call with this very soft voice. And again, I've never been accused of being soft or demure. But she said, hi, it's Geri. And I was like, hey, Geri, how you doing? She said, I have this project, and Dwight brought up your name, and I think that's a great idea. And I've always loved the music, so any way I can get around being musicians, yes. So I said yes without even really asking what it was. And then she said, well, I have this piece I'm going to do at the Apollo about the great women of jazz, and I'd like for you to direct it. Geri, I'm an actor. Well, no, I think you're a director. And I said, Geri, I'm an actor. And she said, well, just talk with me, and, Farah is going to do, Farah Jasmine Griffin is going to do the script, and she's never written the script before. So I thought, okay, so that's good. That's cool. And it was the first thing I ever directed, and it was because of Geri. She did have this uncanny way of seeing things in people that they did not see in themselves. And when Farrah and I finally met, we were both heads together like, how did we get into this? And we looked up and Geri was coming toward us, and it was like, that was it. And it was a wonderful piece. Aura gave me the stage, the diagram for the stage plot, and we started working on the piece. Farrah started writing it. We made some changes. Geri came with the music, and there were different characters. Dinah Washington, Diane Reeves did Sarah Vaughan, and Liz Wright did Dinah Washington, and we fashioned this. We had Moms Mabley, tap dances, and then one day, was Afro Blue always a part of the?
Yes.
Afro Blue,
Yes.
which is a group out of Howard, and then Terri came in late, and then one day she came in and she said, I heard this great organist, Raymond Angry. And I said, well, where would we put him? And she said, oh, right in front of the DJ. And I said, and when did we get a DJ? And so Farrah and I would sit in the back and we would like, okay, Geri, don't go anywhere tonight. We don't want you to go listen to anybody. We want you to stay home and, get all the music together, because we have enough people on the stage that now the stage manager is coming to me and saying, we can't put anybody else on the stage. But she was, and it all worked. There was a place for everyone. DJ Valgenti came and did these wonderful, I can't speak musically. I truly am an actor, and I love music, and I'm not going to pretend that I can speak the way all of you can about music, but these incredible sounds at the beginning of the piece that I had I'd done some voiceover for, and it was really quite an extraordinary day. The idea was that Diane's character was a diva, and we were all there to rehearse. She comes in from the back of the stage, I'm here, I'm so sorry, I'm late, while the understudy is doing her part, and she pushes the girl away, and then we go from there. And it was just an extraordinary...
It's called sound check.
Sound check, that's what it was called. Menopause has snatched every memory that I have.
Wait, I'm right there with you on that.
Okay. It was called sound check, and she was late for sound check. Thank you, Aura.
I just wanted to ask you.
I could talk.
No, I want you to talk. This is all about these collaborations, but I just wanted to dig deeper into, just because I can't remember everybody, and I was there, so maybe between all of us, we can remember. So it was DJ Val.
DJ Valgenti.
It was a Timeline Band with Kenny and
Timeline
Casa.
Band. I'm going to see Raymond Angry.
Ray was actually one of her students, so maybe she ran into him. But I know she
saw him play. She said specifically. I saw him play last night.
But he was one of her students, like back in Howard.
Yeah.
So, but she probably ran into him and thought, let's add Raymond. Tia Fuller was on that show. Now, what I don't remember is, did we have 2 drum sets on stage?
We did.
Yes,
Casa was there as well.
I know he was there, but I didn't know if we shared a kit or if we played
you
2
had
different
2.
kits. Did we play at the same time?
So there were 2 drum sets. There was the DJ and Raymond, and there was
Afro Blue is about what, 10 people?
10 with their.
It's listed here.
Now the Apollo stage is not that big for
Right.
any of you that have. Even if you're sitting in an audience, you don't realize how small a stage can be.
Right. The
And
musical director Kanitra, is that her?
Connetra Miller.
And your friend, the actor.
Karen Melina White.
Oh,
Yeah, she
she
played
played
the Mom's Mabley, and there was two characters she played. What was the other one? Or
She was the stage manager.
She was a stage
She was the
manager.
stage manager that came on and got time us,
Yeah,
because it was a sound check.
yeah, we had to
Yeah.
hurry and move now because
Yeah.
sound check's gonna be over soon.
so she was there. So
Pushing everybody around fast.
And then there was the platform there for Maurice
Maurice.
Chestnut. So there was
And Allie
an alley.
That was her last name?
Benet. Allie Benet.
Allie Benet.
Benet.
Yeah, and I did have some photographs from that. I don't know if you were able to, but I did bring some photos.
Because I looked online for some clips, but we couldn't
I
find
sent
any
some.
clips of the performance.
Send them to you.
I sent them to Ingrid. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, all right. See, I was unaware
Yeah.
of that. That's great.
Yeah, and we used one of the young women from Afro Blue, Shakara Rogers, to be like the young girl who's looking up to this headliner who's late.
And Liz Wright, she played who again?
She did Dinah Washington.
Dinah
There was another person too, wasn't there? Somebody did.
Did a gospel.
Yeah, there was a gospel artist too, because
Yeah.
everybody kind of had a couple of different characters.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know who the female drummer was that I was portraying, but
Well, we were creating history.
okay.
Yeah.
So Tia, tell me while they're looking up the clips. Tell me when you first met Geri. I believe that was the first
Yeah.
performance with you.
Yeah, and thanks to you. Because, well, to give you a little prehistory behind just meeting Geri, I knew about Geri Allen. My sister is a piano player, Shami Royston, and when I was in high school or even middle school, she would listen to Geri Allen. My room was adjacent to hers, and so she would listen to Geri Allen and be talking about how she wanted to go to Howard and study with Geri Allen. And so she has always, and still is, but has been a major figurehead, not only in jazz, but as a Black woman, and along with Terri Lynn Carrington, but in my life. And so the first time that I heard her play was, I think it was back in 2003 or 2004. I can't remember what jazz festival it was, but she was up there and I happened to be backstage. And I remember after she played, I tried to talk with her, but she was really quiet. And so at the time I was like really reserved. So I was like, she doesn't like me. So then years later, I was playing with Terri Lynn, and I had talked with Terri, and I was like, I'd love to play with Geri. And again, this might have been about 6 or 7 years later. Again, I was like, I don't think Geri likes me. And Terri was like, no, she's just really quiet. I was like, I don't know, because I was just so nervous because she had been this major figure. And it was shortly after that, maybe a couple of years after that, you all had been touring, and then you had invited me to be a part of the Harlem, this Harlem stage. And that was my first performance with Geri Allen. And at that moment, we had a moment in the basement where we were just talking. We've had a couple of moments. And that's when I realized how beautiful of a spirit she was. I heard it through her music, but just how it emanated through her being. And then from that point, being on stage and seeing how she worked as a leader and how she's always been just open to exploration. And at times where there was freedom within the structure, she would just encourage me to just play. She was like, Tia, just play, just play. And I remember it was that night that I had a solo and I was walking across stage. I can't even remember who I was portraying. But walked across stage and she was just like, no, just go, just go. And I was like, oh, shoot, okay. So that was the beginning. And since then, she came to Berkeley and we had a tribute to her there. And she was working with the students. And she wanted Wally to come to Berkeley. She was like, this feels like an HBCU here. This feels like a nice warm community. But yeah, that was the first couple of times that I played with her, and I have Terri Lynn to really thank for that, because she encouraged me to approach her outside of me thinking that she didn't like me for whatever reason.
It was the moment that you're talking about. You're doing a union house. You have to stop the show at a certain time. So we're doing a play. And I think the concept for Geri was a play, but you really sound good, so do another. Do it. And we're standing in the back.
That's right, by Red.
Yeah,
She was
that's-
by red.
That's right.
And we were standing in the back, Farrah and I, and we can see the union guy look over to us like this. And Geri kept giving people solos.
She said play.
It was so much, but that's who she was. And she understood the concept of time, but she also understood that when it sounded good,
Right.
then we should continue. But the 2 nights that we did it, every night at the time that they needed to come down, the guy would look over and he would go. So one night I said to her, Geri, this is a union house, so we have to get out of here. And she said, oh, I won't do it again. I promise. I won't do it again. And the next night, I can't remember who it was, but they were jamming, and Geri got up from the piano.
But see, that's because the spirit hit her, and when
Yes.
the spirit hits you,
Yes.
It was all about the music.
Exactly.
It's always in her head constantly. And she wants it to play out until somebody stops her.
Now, Aura, tell me, when, I'm sure she came up with this idea about the Apollo and spoke to you about it first.
1,000 times.
Tell us, speaking to
Yes, she did. Well, she had this project that she was working on, again, thinking, as you've been talking about ladies, and sometimes ladies are forgotten in the world of jazz. And she decided that she wanted to write this piece about the great ladies of the Apollo. And of course, that was a big, big deal. And then she said to me, she hadn't written the piece, but I think, and I want to do it at the Apollo because I'm naming it the Apollo. I said, well, how am I going to get the Apollo? I can't get the Apollo. Oh, yes, you can. Same story.
Right.
So eventually, I got the Apollo. And I was shocked for my own self because I didn't think I could get the Apollo. But I did, and they were happy to have us, and it was absolutely incredible. But the issue was, one of my jobs after I got the Apollo was to keep them updated constantly how the show was progressing. Well, that was not easy because Geri was writing constantly, but not only was she writing for the Apollo, she was teaching, she had children, she had other outside duties, she had private students, but she was going to do the great ladies of the Apollo. So therefore, the very last day of our show, the beginning of the show, she was still writing.
Yeah.
We had many changes. But the bottom line, the show went off absolutely gorgeous. It was just beautiful. It was exciting.
And we would have these conference calls, Farrah and Geri and I, about, what was happening with the show, how we can continue to make it better, how we can tighten it up. Those calls were always very focused, and there would be a couple of laughs here and there, but basically, when we got on those conference calls, it was how can we make the show better? What can we do? For background, and a lot of that stuff, I was like, you leave that to me. Let me talk to the stage crew. I'll take care of whatever lights we could get, because we were sort of doing some of it on the fly.
But she had it all in her head.
It was all in
She
her
had
head.
everything that she had planned to put on paper, and to have everyone to do. It was all in her head. It was just a matter of time for her to put it on paper and give it to everyone.
And give it to me so that I
Yeah,
can right.
direct.
Right.
So that you could direct.
Right.
So tell me this: how did it work? Did she come with a list of songs first, or did she have the characters in mind? Did she have the guest artist in mind?
She started thinking about the great ladies of the Apollo, like Sarah Vaughan. She thought Sarah Vaughan was wonderful. She, like Betty, characterized Sarah, that God gave Sarah this voice where all she needed to do was open her mouth and things would come out like a bird. So she wanted this bird to have this great diva day at the Apollo. And then
But in
same thing.
the mix of that, there had to be the story.
Yes.
That's
what I'm
I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
how did
but
the
then
music
that's-
start to tell the
I
story?
think what happened first was that she had songs. She gave Farrah a list of songs.
Yeah.
And then between the three of us, one brainstorming, we came up with the idea of the sound check. And then that gave Farrah a starting point. So how do we start it? How do we bring the ladies up on stage? And I came up with the idea that, Diane is late, and Diane loved it. The thing that I love about working with musicians, and especially singers, is that a lot of them know how to cross over from using the lyric to speaking the words. And the ones that can't don't always sing the lyric. You know what I mean? Is that making sense? But like, it's what I loved about working with Carmen. Carmen, the way she will interpret a song, she can change that into acting. And a lot of people think that once I start acting, I need to be something different. I need to be bigger. And it's not always so. And so we found Diane to be really open to wanting to act these, these words that we had written for her. And Shakara had never acted before.
No.
So that was kind of how I came into play. But the idea, again, the whole idea of the ladies was Geri's, and Farrah fashioned it around those thoughts, and then I fashioned the show around Farrah's writing.
So tell me this: do you feel were there any things you came away with that you felt you would do differently, or if you had?
Oh yeah, that was the first time I had ever directed, so there were a lot of things I would have done differently.
We wanted 2 more days.
A week.
Yes, yes. Because this was done in a very short period of time for such a large company. But back again, she had these ladies in mind that she wanted to give special gifts to. And like with Sarah, the part of Sarah, she went through, and once she decided upon Sarah, found some tunes that she thought would be appropriate. And the same with Vired. What would Vired do and sing at this concert? So she made a set list for all of these characters that she was making. And then she presented that to you all, and Farrah and you just ran with it.
Was it videotaped?
No,
No, not that
one.
one. No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to any specific things that lingered for you that.
Well, I think it's just having time to really do it properly. As an actor, I understand, when I get direction from a director, how to place it. But when you're working with people who don't act on stage, then you need a little more time.
Yes.
And I think that what I learned is that I can direct a singer to act. And so the opportunity to do it again, I think that, hitting the points that you need to hit so that they could do what they need to do quickly, is something that a singer might not really know. And I think it's just working with the crew. There was such a professional crew. There was a lot that I let sat back on because they knew what they were doing. I would be stronger, as I was when we did Mary Lou, because it was a first experience for both Farrah and I. So as we stood in the back watching, we took notes for ourselves on what we would do differently, how we would have entrances, and, you know, over here was a little crowded over here on stage. How could I have cleared that up a little bit so entrances and exits could be a little cleaner and smoother, those kinds of things.
I remember the bow.
What?
It was just a lot of, I mean, I had never had to rehearse a bow before.
Oh, yeah.
So, I was
many.
thinking how many big shows I had been on. I know, Tia, you've done Beyonce and been on some pretty big productions. I'm not sure if you guys rehearse bows, probably, but I was like, wow, are we really doing this bow again?
Oh, yeah. Actors rehearse bow.
I know, which was interesting though, because as you said, you were working with musicians and singers, and we're used to low budgets. You know what I mean? We're used to trying to make something happen.
But that's what I grew up in guerrilla theater. You know, that's what I call it. Guerrilla theater, where, you know, the girls would go in and dress, and then the boys would go in the dressing room. You know, that's
right.
Because there wasn't any space. The lights would go off in the middle of the show. And what do? You hold your position until the lightning passes and the light comes back up and you start all over. You know, I've done a lot of theater like that. But as a director, you know, turn the tables. And now I see myself in this other position where I'm responsible for everything that happens on stage. And so, you know, to answer your question, there certainly would have been some things I would have done over again. But one of the things that always happens in the theater is that everyone gets the bow. And you know how you do that and rehearse it so it's done smoothly. And there were a lot of stuff on stage, a lot of equipment, so you want to make sure everybody goes off smoothly. So it's fun. That's what
And
you would
you
remember.
also had the work people.
Yeah.
That was working at the stage.
Yeah,
They had
exactly.
to come bow too.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Right. And as a drummer, from being behind the drum kit most of the time, that was probably the most uncomfortable part for me.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
You made it.
You know, an actor. That's what an actor look.
Yeah, I'm not used to that.
You know, that's what an actor wants. You know, thank you.
But I love the term guerrilla. I'm going to use that, guerrilla jazz. That's going to be the new term.
Yeah, little funky places, you know, where the elevators don't work and you're doing a theater show on the third floor.
So how long was the period of time between that and then when you did Conversations with Mary Lou?
I think it was
2 years?
about a year. I think we did 13. We did the Apollo.
So it was
13.
So it was 2
Yeah.
years. It was
So when Geri or Aura called you again, what was your first reaction?
Well, you know, it was Geri. She
Geri
said, I
called.
have this other idea. And I was like, what is it? You know, because by then I knew that I wanted to direct and that I had been secretly holding on to this desire and had never stepped into it for fear that, you know, I might do something wrong or look like an idiot. And Geri just paved the way for me to do it so smoothly and gave me such confidence that I've since directed other things. But it was 2 years later, and it was a similar situation where she had Harlem Stage had asked her
Harlem Stage.
had asked her to do this show on Mary Lou Williams, and she called her trusty girls, me and Farrah, and we started to work. You know, from Farrah, what kind of, just the same thing, the brainstorming, which is what I really appreciated about what I've heard here today, about what an incredible collaborator she was, and it just In all areas of the arts, she was curious. And so, we would sit and have these conversations about script and, what we could use and what would really tell the story concisely within this time frame that we have at the theater. She already knew she wanted Carmen, because Carmen has this amazing, the songbook, the Mary Lou Williams songbook. And then Kenny and Casa, it was just the right mix of things. And Farah, again, came up with an incredible script that we were able to, tighten up and at the time that we needed. We went back and forth on some of the music.
I love the way you and Farah came up with the title of the show, which I thought was just brilliant.
That was mostly Sarah.
Conversation
That was mostly
with Mary
Farah.
Lou.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And that you wanted to tell her story.
Yeah.
And how are you going to tell it? So
And
you
at
have a
one
conversation.
point, we thought it would really be lovely to have Geri speak we wanted piano Mary Lou and singing Mary Lou, but we could not drag her to the microphone to say one line. I was like, one line, Geri, just one line. No, Epatha, well, why don't you do it? And I said, but I'm directing. You asked me to direct it. Just one line. And she tried once, I think, just once.
And she can sing.
I didn't know that.
She can.
But so it ended up having piano Mary Lou just play piano and singing Mary Lou also speak Mary Lou. Act Mary Lou, as Carmen did so beautifully.
So I didn't see this particular production, but what was the approach, to this one? You explained some about the Apollo and this being a sound check and walking through the audience and all that.
Well, we really wanted to tell Mary Lou's story, and we wanted to start at the beginning and hit points in her life that were that meant something, that were seminal moments in her life. And so, Farah had already written some things about Mary Lou anyway, so she knew her trajectory as an artist and a person, and so she was able to come up with these moments in her life that we were able to put music around it, and that spoke to what the script was talking about. And so it was really, and the cool thing was the space at Harlem Stage, I don't know if any of you know, it's a gatehouse up at 135th and Convent, and it was a water station, and they've made it into this box, and you can form it any way you'd like, but this was proscenium. And it has this amazing arch that you can light. And so we simply just put a screen up. I brought 2 rugs from my house. We threw guerrilla theater, but it made it look beautiful, didn't it? Yeah. The simplicity of these rugs, and we put one little step up for Carmen, so it would look like she was going into her home, and
Church.
and church.
The church.
And then we had these photographs of every time we'd go into a different part of Mary Lou's life, there would be a photograph to depict where she was and how she looked at that time. And we also used some of her art and her drawings as well. And I'll have to say, I knew who Mary Lou Williams was, but I had no idea how dynamic a person and player she was until we started doing this piece.
So was this more daunting in any way than the Apollo?
No, the Apollo was more daunting. This was much smaller in scale,
Right.
so I could handle it. And again, huge fan of Carmen Lundy, so it took me about 2 days just to get over the fact that I'd be hanging out with Carmen. And how do I talk to Carmen Lundy? And Geri said to me, "No, you'll love her. She's really cool." And I was like, "Okay." But the thing that was it's what Geri understood, was that the people that she put together could work together. And then Carmen and I gained this language. She would work on a part of the script, and if I had a note, I could just stand up next to her and I'd say, "Well, what do you think?" And we would have a conversation, and immediately I could see that she not only heard the note, but she internalized the note, and she would put it into the character. So it was, I felt that I had more of a handle on what I was doing. And as an actor, I just started changing the way I thought about what I love from directors. And those directors that come to me and waste my time, and those directors that come to me and allow me to experiment, and those directors that come to me and say one word, and I know exactly what they're talking about. And that's what I wanted to learn with Carmen, is that I could go up to her and say a couple of words, not one yet, I'm not there yet.
And also to your question, with the great ladies of the Apollo, we had a crew of about 25, 26.
Right.
And Harlem stage, there were maybe 5, 6. So there was a big difference in the number of crews.
Yeah, it was just a much larger scale.
But I guess what I was thinking is it's sometimes harder to make a show as, interesting, because you have so many different elements in the Apollo show, and with a much smaller band and much smaller just cast in general, was it harder in a sense?
May I say, maybe it was because we were focused on this, there are all these women of the Apollo, okay? So we're talking about Sarah and
Right.
Vi and all, but this was Mary Lou.
Music.
And because it was just this one entity whose career spanned like 5 decades, I mean, when she started talking about who she was and how she got there, you was, wait a minute, she wrote those charts for Duke Ellington and she wrote the stuff, So I think it was because you had so much going on with the one person that allowed you to sort of deal with how to get this one character understood by the
That's right,
audience, or
right.
to tell the story to get that script off the page. So perhaps that's what made it easier, was because we didn't have to introduce all these characters.
It was just totally focused. It was singular. We had to add all the other characters, and as you were saying, like 20 people
Yeah.
backstage working the stage. But this was really simple, so we could have very quiet rehearsal times. We can have very specific times with just Carmen and I and script. Geri could have specific time to work the songs, would rehearse the songs with the band. It was just 2 members, and it was a trio. So the simplicity of it, I think, made it move so flawlessly.
So you also just mentioned the big band. That was actually one of my next questions, because Mary Lou, 2 of the things that stand out in my mind about Mary Lou Williams is the Mass and the big band arrangements she did for Duke Ellington. There was and Fletcher Henderson, I think.
Woody Herman.
Woody Herman, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so did you guys tap into some of her larger works, and how did you work that out musically with the trio and vocal?
Wow. I'm fascinated by how Geri Allen studied the music of Mary Lou and nailed it. Let me tell you, I mean, the piano music, when we listened to the concert last night, and the range of her and the depth of her expression, the way she could sound so simplistic and play Mary Lou so often, with such authenticity. was astonishing to me that Geri had that kind of skill and focus to be able to almost beam herself back, you know,
She knew that
into that time and deliver that. So this was fascinating to me to have all these other kind of playing situations with her, then to get into Mary Lou's music. And then, of course, because we talked yesterday, I think Mount was talking about how deeply religious she was, and it was Farrah who was saying that, and comparing the three of you and how.
my
Oh, wait. I was about to tell you that, Epatha. Wait. Farrah outed you.
Scandal.
No, Farrah outed you. So you know, she told everybody that you don't go to church.
Yeah.
And that when you have the meetings at your apartment about the script, that Geri would be probably drinking tea, and you would definitely be drinking wine. And Farrah would be drinking a little bit of both.
Oh, she outed me?
But even there, you know, that's why I think she just wrapped her heart around that mass and music, and just played it in such a way that there was a connection. It was an interesting way that she could spiritually embody the music of Mary Lou, not necessarily the person, because we couldn't get her to speak, so it's not going to happen. But that she had that willingness and depth to go there in the music and the sound. So, I mean, I guess I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it really. So this piece of that we're talking about, Mary Lou, started with when she learned from Jelly Roll Martin and Fats Waller. Talks about that. And Roland. So she would go into that and just play Jelly Roll Martin.
Yeah.
And the next thing she'd be doing Fats Waller.
Lovey Austin.
Lovey Austin, right. And then, so each period that we talked about, wow, if it didn't come out of this piano with exact, spot on authenticity. So, and then here, all of this is Mary Lou, you see? So that in and of itself was a huge undertaking. And I now can understand why she didn't want to say anything. You know, when I talk about it with you, I understand. It's like, look, this is enough to just be able to
And then,
One
get
line.
this,
Come
you
on,
know.
Carmen, one line.
and then she decided.
So how are we, so I said to Epatha, how are they, is the audience going to know that there's two people up here? How are they going to know that we're talking about this one entity, Mary Lou? So how do we tell the audience that without scripting it?
So
And it
now
worked.
she tells me she wants to travel this.
It worked.
And where are we going to travel? She says, the Kennedy Center.
Get me the Kennedy Center.
Or get the Kennedy Center. So I got the Kennedy Center. And then, of course, being Geri, because she had become such a strong supporter and follower of the Mary Lou Williams family. Several of her sisters are still alive. So now we have to bring the sisters down from Pittsburgh
Yeah.
to see the concert to get them out. And that was just a big deal.
That was
for her.
great. And you know, the thing that tripped me out, I remember talking to a friend of mine, and I said, you know, I'm down in D.C., I'm working on the Conversations with Mary Lou. She was like, oh, the piece you did up in Harlem. And I said, yeah. She said, you're where? I said, I'm at the Kennedy Center. And I was like, Geri Allen always finds these ways of putting me
Yes.
someplace that I never expect. I never expect.
I'm curious, you said, how did you bring the two together without scripting it? So how did that work exactly?
So I suggested to Epatha, well, how about if when the show opens, I'm on the piano bench next to Geri, but the audience doesn't see me. So it's like I step out of Geri's body from the piano. And that's how we opened it.
How did you guys pull that off?
It's the arch in the place. That arch allowed us to, and the piano allowed us to hide her.
So on Jerry's left hand, like
Yeah.
on Jerry's left side, yeah.
So how did you do it at the Kennedy Center?
She was just there. I mean, she came out on stage. There was no way to do it there. I don't think we did it
I
there.
think, I feel like we did it there. I don't know why. I feel maybe it's just the
Because I was up, and it might have been because I was in the balcony watching down, but I don't recall us doing it at the Kennedy.
No.
So what were some other differences with the Kennedy Center versus the Harlem stage?
Well, the nice thing about the Kennedy Center is that Carmen had the opportunity to really relax in the words, right? And so it was a very different experience. We didn't, because at Harlem stage, it was more or less a staged reading with music. So we made sure there were 3 music stands so that as she moved from one side of the stage to the other, if she needed to look at the script, she could. But at the Kennedy Center, Miss Carmen was like, I want to learn the words. And I was like, go. Learn the words. Yeah. And she did a hell of a job. And again, it's working with singers and letting them understand that when you speak the lyric, it's no different than when you sing it if you do it with the same passion, you know.
How much of it was spoken or scripted, and how many between the songs and the script?
All of it was scripted.
And there had to be 15 or
Yeah.
more songs.
That you sang?
Yeah.
Wow.
She had a lot of work to do. She sang and the voice.
Yeah. And then Geri played like songs from Zodiac. So there was Taurus and
Gemini.
Gemini.
We're playing that tonight, by the way.
Gemini and Scorpio, I think.
Scorpio.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my favorites is Virgo, but we're not.
I would say that's one of the hardest, that's one of the most challenging things for me, is to, I'm a vocalist. So it's like, I'm comfortable there. But now the music stops, and now I have to speak and be a character. And that transition is one of the most difficult things to do, I find.
Yeah, but again, the thing that was satisfying for me is that she understood how to take direction, and that's what will make a difference. And when you interpret a song, and I know I'm repeating myself, it's no different. It's like, all I know is I'm in love with you, even though you say that we are through. All I know is I'm in love with you. Even though you say that we are through, it really is the same interpretation. Or maybe I had more attitude. But nonetheless, it really is the same thing, but you're just speaking, and Carmen really understands that.
You sing really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Let me say on that. Now, Geri was not able to get you to sing, and she tried.
Talking about her.
She did. It's different though when you're, I did a lot of musicals when I first started, but it's easier for me to do that when I have words. It's just the opposite. Like, I'm cool when I'm talking, and the minute you tell me I have to sing, then I get really nervous. And to her credit, she did. And we were very close at one point, and then I changed my mind. I was afraid. Yeah, I was afraid.
So you said a minute ago that you had done more after these 2 projects with Geri. You went on to direct some more, largely thanks to Geri. Right?
Absolutely.
So-
I mean, there was no fear anymore of it. And so yeah, I've done a couple of little projects that I've been a lot. Oh, one project in particular is a young woman that grew up with me, next door to me, had an experience where she was coming from Israel, and she had a layover in Turkey, but she forgot to take the hashish out of her pocket. So she spent 3 months in a Turkish prison in isolation because she is a lesbian, and they didn't know if she was a man or a woman. And so they isolated her so she wouldn't be disruptive, is what she was told. And so she wrote the story, wrote the play, and I directed the play.
Wow.
And that was and another piece is a friend is working on a 2-character piece of something that happened to her when she was a young girl, and how she and her best friend dealt with the issue. But that's still in development stage. But you know, I'm actively seeking pieces I could direct, which is kind of fun. But theater, you know, I wouldn't want to, like I'm doing this show now called Chicago Med. I would never want, it's too big, it's too frightening, maybe later on, but right now it's nice to just be in the theater.
Well, you just need Geri there to tell you can do Chicago Med too.
I hear her voice all the time. Yeah.
But maybe we can open it up in a moment for a few questions. I just wanted to kind of, in closing, maybe start with you, Carmen, and just talk about maybe what Geri's legacy means to you, or the void that you feel without her.
I'm still processing it, quite honestly. She's, on a personal level, I think I'm asking myself, I actually want to know if I disappointed her ever, if I ever let her down, things like that. So I'm still processing. There's so many things I learned from her about her gentle nature, how to convey her ideas, and to how she could will or bring the best out of a situation with this calmness and with this assured manner. And that was who she was. It wasn't how she thought she needed to be to manipulate what she wanted. Observing her with her children and how dedicated a mother she was also incredibly inspiring to me. And she also wanted me to scat all the time.
That's why I got you doing it tonight.
And, you know, somewhere along the way, people started to associate being a jazz vocalist with scatting, you know, and my creativity comes in other forms. It's not always waiting for that little, 3.5 minutes of 4 choruses. So I felt like I let her down a little bit because I guess she believed that I had the facility, but I wasn't necessarily in that zone or commitment. Maybe I'd already outgrown that phase of whatever I was trying to prove that I'm a musician, you know. That's a big thing for me as someone that's, I feel like I'm a musician. I just happen to sing with it. So I didn't really feel like I had to do that all the time. But with her, I felt like I let her down if I said, no, you got it. You can give it to Tia. She's cool. She'll do it. So when you said, oh, Carmen, you called me up and said, just do what Betty, we're doing this tune tonight that she wrote for Betty Carter. And when you said, oh, Carmen, you can just open it up and scat, I was like, oh, here we go. But that's what I mean when I say I let her down, that I think she had this kind of a faith or belief in me. and she around, in a roundabout way got me to do it. Like even in the Mary Lou stuff, said, okay, Carmen, when you're going to start it, and but other than that, this is one of the most difficult. This is our contemporary. We've grown up in the music together, and it's such an untimely passing. It just doesn't feel. It feels in a way unnatural to not have her with us. That's what I'm struggling with and processing, and I can say that to you openly. And there are other things that are just, so personal that I'm not quite sure where I am.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, and I feel the same sentiment. And I was thinking last night, talking to Esperanza too, that I think the untimeliness, of her passing somehow made her music bigger and made her jump, to jazz icon status, even more than she already was. So that's the only thing that the positivity at the end of the day is that, now, her music will really have another life of its own. And so I kind of rest a little bit in that, because that's the thing that was so important to her, other than her children, the music, everything was the music, so now it's in a special place. Not that it wasn't before, but more people are paying attention to it, and that's a beautiful thing. Tia, did you have any thoughts about what she left you with? Or?
Definitely. I feel like I kind of came in on the end just because we met about 5 years ago. And I remember sitting in an airport. I can't remember which airport it was, but it was a gig with you. And we were just talking about her career. And I had asked her if she had any regrets or if she would have done anything differently. And she sat there in her gentle space and started with silence and reflection. Of course, it's Geri. And then she said, I think I would have broken into the scene, not just an avant-garde player, because she had said that when she started coming onto the scene, a lot of people tokened her as the avant-garde pianist. So when Mulgrew Miller had passed away, she was like, they didn't think to even call me to play his tribute. And so one of the many lessons that she taught me and what she shared with me was just be careful how you put yourself out there in the market, because people will hold on to a certain perception if they see you early on. And she felt that if she would have done it a different direction, like started more in the straight ahead, then it would have spanned her career even more. And I was like, what? You're Terri Allen. But she was like, yeah. She's just like, it was very much, she felt more limited from the public, not from within herself, but just the public. Upon her passing, also administratively, I remember teaching at the all-female jazz residency that she led, the Geri Allen all-female jazz camp in Montclair, New Jersey. And the first year I got a chance to just be in her presence there as an administrator. Mind you, this was after the show that we did. I remember walking by the office and everybody was around her, all the staff, and then she was just sitting there, peacefully taking information in and making very sound decisions. Just sound decisions. In the midst of silence, everybody might be imparting what they thought needed to happen, and she would take everything in, but then she would respond in a very direct, but a gentle and secure way of saying, this is what it is, and it will be okay. And that to me, not only as a musician, but of course as an overall being, as a mother and as an administrator, as a leader, how she functioned and how she truly set the standard with her silence, just with her being. And I'm sure everyone's been speaking about this throughout this weekend, but that's one thing that whenever I'm in flux, I can tap into Geri, the spirit of Geri, to like center my decision making.
Yeah, the serenity part of her. That's why I think I wanted to tap into these sides of her for the name of the concert tonight, which I was happy. Yesterday, Vijay said he called her a genius and was basically saying that people weren't calling her that as often as they should have while she was alive. And so also I named the show Genius, Grace, and Fire because those three elements really, depicted her to me, her being to me. You guys have any final thoughts?
Well, I think one of the things that I think about a lot is, in thinking of Geri's legacy, is her compositions, her compose. Thank you. All the beautiful, beautiful, wonderful pieces that she wrote. She wrote really large pieces. She did things solo, trio, quartet, but she had so much music in her head. It was in her body. She was always thinking music, and she would sit up sometime at night and just write. 2015, we got a commission from the Monterey Jazz Festival. She had said, Aura, I'm not going to play the small stage anymore at Monterey. I have to have the main stage, or I'm not going. Okay. So I said, well, I could try to get a commission, but you're going to have to write a big piece. Fine. So she made the decision, which I'm still in love with it, the Dazzler. I'm so excited about that still. She wrote a piece for Sammy Davis Jr. because she felt that tap dancing was just totally had been removed from music, and going back to the olden days, they used tap dancers a lot and comedians. And she wrote this wonderful piece called The Dazzler. And I wanted to put it up on the screen. I mean, there's just so many wonderful pieces, about 14 pieces of music. I don't read music, but I can look at something and know when it's beautiful. And when you have the music and someone like Maurice Chestnut to pass it through, and just to see all of this beautiful music she wrote to give tribute to Sammy Davis Jr. is just something I still think is just the most beautiful thing ever, because you don't think of tap dancers in music. And she worked that through just beautifully.
And what about you, Epatha? Any closing remarks?
What did you say?
Oh, I was asking Epatha if she had any closing remarks.
I was doing a play, excuse me, last summer, and I'm sorry.
It's okay.
And I was speaking to Carmen. And we were just, just trying to stay connected. And the theater, the dressing rooms were in the basement, so your phones did not work. So I was going outside so I could talk to Carmen. And on the day that Geri passed, my phone rang in the dressing room, and it was Carmen. And I was like, God damn it, Geri. I don't want the fucking phone to work. I want you. And she was just an incredible, gentle, loving, extraordinary, fierce, and fragile person. And I think that the music that she left us, it should be treasured. And the last thing she did for me was she connected me to UPitt, and now I'm a doctor. Dr. Merkerson.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she was extraordinary.
Yeah. Just, I want to try to leave us all on celebrate this woman and her artistry as much as possible, and, talk to your friends about her and buy some records. Don't stream them, buy them. I know for me, it's she's definitely left me with the feeling of always dig deeper.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Please buy more records. This is a great one here. This is a great one. Too. They really are. They really
Are there any questions in closing?
I have a question of Carmen. Oh, thanks. Of Carmen. When I think of scat and female vocalists, I think of Ella Fitzgerald, of course. What is the history of scat? I mean, do we know who introduced?
Louis Armstrong.
Was it Louis Armstrong? I think of Cab Calloway too, but it was Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the story is true or not. I heard something like that the horn, the mouthpiece fell or something, and he was in the middle of something and just kept going with his, some kind of story like that.
Oh, right.
But I always, my model for what I do is Billie Holiday. And of course, all the others followed. But Billie was the definitive jazz vocalist for me. And she never scat, you know what I mean? And I think I did a couple of Billie Holiday plays, and I had to do some research, and there was this the needle dropped on something, and the first 18 measures was a big band, and she started scatting, and I was like, Billie Holiday scatting? But I think the origins are definitely coming out of the great Louis Armstrong.
Why do you think Geri liked you to scat so much? What was it about scat?
What defines this music and I guess you can agree or kind of disagree with me, but I think it has to do with improvisation. So much of what we're about is improvisation. I mean, how we got here as a people has to do with improvisation, So I think that's really it, and for as much as the horn player is, like a Dexter Gordon is playing, that lyric is coming through that horn, sometimes the one that has the lyric wants to do that same thing and take that moment to express themselves because, at that point in the tune, maybe it's not about words coming out, but maybe it's about just being able to be part of them in the mix. You have to remember when Ella Fitzgerald was in the music, there was Dizzy here and Bird here.
Right.
I mean, what would you do?
They were great scatterers. But wait, they were great scatterers. Dizzy Gillespie and Roy Eldridge and people like that. They scattered. They're the only people that could stand next to Ella Fitzgerald and improvise. So I mean, it's very interesting that she was as powerful as she was to stand next to these guys and be like a horn. Be an
And she was a
instrument.
tap dancer, Ella Fitzgerald. Ella Fitzgerald tap danced her way. She was an orphan. I don't know if you all know this, but she was an orphan. And grew up in Yonkers. And before she was taken in by this family, she would just to eat. She would stand on the street corners in Harlem and tap dance for money. So that's swinging, that hard swinging. Do you understand? So
That's why her rhythm was so. Well, that's why her rhythm was so That's amazing. That's why her rhythm was. And you know, she actually told me once that I just have to share this as an anecdote, and Geri would love this, you know, for me to share this story. I was a kid and hanging out in the dressing room with her, and it was just me and her. And I had seen this Grammy show where it was her and I think Betty, but it was definitely Sarah and Carmen, I believe. And they had like the four top jazz singers at the time. And so they started. They probably did the one that was
Just get a test.
the one that starts slow and then goes fast. Patty Austin actually did it too. Recorded.
Paganini.
Okay. Mr. Paganini. I think it was that. But anyway, so she started. Carmen or Sarah or somebody started singing, and then went to the double time. And Ella took over, and it was just over. And so I had just seen this, and I said, you know, I was young. I said, man, you just dusted them last night, you know. And she said, I'll never forget this. She said, no. Those women are really great singers. I'm just a rhythm singer. Wow. And she said that, you know, a couple of times. I'm just a rhythm singer. Those women are singers. And I was like, I didn't understand what she meant. But then when I dug deep into, you know, her time and her rhythm with all the notes, it was almost like she was putting the time and the rhythm above the melodic content. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like it took me, you know, about 30 years to get that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Given all the things that have been expressed and portrayed over the last couple of days, might the next project that all of you work on be a portrayal of Geri's life and her impact through music and words? Wouldn't that be something to work on together? Might that be the next thing?
Great.
That would be amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
Be amazing.
I think we're all signed up for that.
Yeah.
That's Aura. Come on now, Aura. Can you get us?
Come on now.
Carnegie Hall.
Carnegie Hall.
Carnegie Hall. That's right.
There you go.
Coachella.
Hey, you all. Thank you so much for this incredible conversation. And I want to say a couple of things that are all related. First of all, I've been to a bunch of events in this room, many of them hosted by Mr. Gates. But I don't know that there's ever been a panel discussion of 5 African-American women in this room. So I want to make sure that the archive has that nugget in there as a sort of factoid, like this is actually a historic moment in its own right. And I also, you know, the projects that we spoke about here, that you spoke about of Geri's, we're celebrating black women, right? And, you know, we didn't need to put too fine a point on it, and neither did she. This is just how she operated. She just said, well, we need to do this. Mm-hmm. Whether it was these projects or the summer camp that you mentioned that was specifically for teenage girls, introducing them into this music. And I know that she didn't really love to be labeled or tagged in any way, but I think we need to allow ourselves to say that Geri Allen was a black feminist who of historic importance, and that is something that we need to hold next to all the other things that we've been saying about her this weekend. And so I just want to thank you for bringing that to the fore, again, without having to force the issue, but in a way that just makes it abundantly obvious to all of us. So thank you.
The gentle ambush. Yeah. That's good.
Thank you very much for joining us and talking about Geri Allen with us and letting her spirit reverberate in the room and in the universe. Thanks.
We're going to have just some closing remarks from a few of us in just a minute, right? Maybe I wanted to hand the mic to Mount Allen. Where is he? Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Wow. I'll make it real brief.
She loved you too.
When we were growing up, Geri was the same person. She told our parents at a very young age that she was going to play jazz. And if any of you know my father, that's like a death wish. You know, she was classically trained, and she was going to be a classical pianist. And at a certain point, in that very quiet nature of hers, she just, you know, it was very clear. She had made a decision. There was nothing anyone could do that would veer her away from that. You could say it as much as you want, and she would hear it, and she wouldn't necessarily agree with you, but she would very quietly take it in.
Yes.
And then she would make a decision. And she would let you know the decision hasn't changed. Right? So I feel so incredibly blessed to have had her as my role model. And she like created a space that was like powerful for women. I really never knew that women in leadership was an issue. You know, it's just, that's how it is. That's who she's always encircled herself with. And I just thought it was natural. So I thank lots of folks. Aura, you, Terri Lynn, you. I mean, I could go through a whole list of folks, quite frankly, but all of the people that she encircled herself with, they've all kind of shown up in a lot. Esperanza, they've all showed up in very, very big ways. So I just want to say thank you for all that you've done, and to Mira, what Vijay was saying, you took a lot of my words, brother. This is a true statement about the opportunity of leadership that we in this world are missing out on by not letting women take the helm when they should. Ingrid, thank you for inviting me here. Vijay, thank you for inviting me, the institution. And on behalf of the entire Allen family, know that the Allen family is doing very well.
Yes.
And that in her absence, she's cleared this incredible path for growth for us all. I guess that's really all I have to say. You know, just thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mount. I just want to thank everybody who's been part of this symposium. Vijay and I talked about getting this together last July, and it means everything to me and to us that we were able to make it happen, that all of you came here and just exceeded anything we could possibly have imagined in terms of doing honor to Geri Allen. And just thank you. We hope we can continue to participate in the future of the legacy and to have other events like it. And it's a team effort, and just thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I think we'll just bring this to a close and hopefully have a big group hug or something like that. And then, and we have a big group hug of a concert this evening at 8 o'clock.
Absolutely.
So please come. We'll see you then. Thank you all.